as ever. And rest assured, of course, we have regular news updates throughout the evening and beyond. Welcome to the France 24 debate. We're focusing on the situation in Turkey, gateway between East and West, candidate for EU entry, NATO member in a strategic place in the Middle East. Well, that is true about Turkey. Our debate, though, comes about as the former head of the military there has been sentenced to life in prison for trying to overthrow the government. So is this a sign that Turkey is moving towards stability, becoming a place where democracy and not the army has the key role? Or is it indicative of something else? Is Turkey on the verge of becoming, say, an Islamic state, as some people fear? Analysts say Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has become the most powerful leader of Turkey since Ataturk. It was, of course, Ataturk who founded modern-day Turkey and imposed the separation of state and religion. Erdogan's AKP party blurs those lines, and recent demonstrations against Erdogan have highlighted a widespread concern over this perceived Islamification. Our guests for this debate, starting here in the studio, we have Dorothée Schmidt, who's researcher and director on the Contemporary Turkey programme at IFRI, which is the French International Relations Institute. Dorothée, thank you for being with us here. Looking forward to hearing your views. On the other side of our studio from Dorothée, we have Arnaud CASTAIGNET, who's a communications consultant, a member of the board of directors of youth diplomacy. But Arnaud's also a former risk analyst advising on countries, including Turkey. So your knowledge will be essential in this debate. Let's bring in our guests or introduce rather our guests joining us from afar. Starting by satellite from Ankara, we have Abdullah Bozkurt, who's the Ankara bureau chief and columnist of the daily newspaper Zaman. Thank you, sir, for being with us. We'll bring you in as soon as we possibly can. Joining us by phone from London. No problem at all, sir. Thank you for being with us. It's guests like you that make this all worthwhile. By phone from London, Tolga, who is a Turkish citizen, joining us from London, as we say, a risk analyst working for the London firm Exclusive Analyst. Tolga, we'll be hearing from you in a moment's time. You too, that's you, the viewers at home, can join this debate as well by using either the Facebook page of this programme or tweeting via Twitter on the Twitter handle hashtag F24debate. Your tweets will be fielded by our editor in the studio gallery, and of course we'll put them on screen as soon as we can get them up. Let's kick off this debate then by hearing from our correspondent who's been following this story of the trial in Turkey, our correspondent Jasper Mortimer. Jasper, thanks for being with us. Let's get from you then some more on the context and the possible repercussions of this trial.
Yes, well, Mark, Turkey has had 4 coups in the past 63 years, so it's important that coup plotters are punished. But such trials must be credible. Now, this trial has gone on for 4 years, and it has long been mired by allegations of concocted evidence, the prosecutors interrogating innocent people, and the government using the case to attack its political enemies, a sort of witch hunt. And people were hoping that today's verdict would cut through the nonsense and produce a judgment that most Turks would regard as fair and politically neutral. Now, it doesn't look as if that has happened. The court here behind me handed down 17 life sentences, and they also gave very heavy sentences to people whom you wouldn't think deserved them, such as 2 former principals of universities who got 10 years in jail, a well-known political scientist who's 80 years old and has written a host of books. He got 22 years in jail. Now, the people outside this court were very angry. The lawyers were saying they were going to take it on appeal. However, what matters is what the public at large think. A Turkish journalist who knows this country better than I do said that some people will think that the sentences passed today were excessive, but they're not going to take to the streets about it. However, he may be wrong. There have already been demonstrations this evening in Istanbul and Ankara. What does matter is how far the public indignation carries this. 2 steps that we can expect is that the judges have yet to hand down their reasoning, whether the reasoning will justify the heavy sentences, and secondly, what the appeal court decides about today's verdict.
Jasper, before I leave you, can you just give us one further explanation? It's called the Ergenekon conspiracy. Could you explain what that is, please?
Yes, look, basically this goes back to a myth about how the Turkish nation was founded, and they were trapped in a valley called Ergenekon, and a wolf led them out of that valley, so they escaped their enemies. It's a sort of hark back of Turkish nationalism. The basic plot was not actually to overthrow the government directly, but to create such mayhem that there would be pressure for the army to step in. And some of these instances of mayhem, such as throwing hand grenades into a centrist newspaper's offices and shooting a judge while he was in court, those two instances did actually happen.
Jasper Mortimer, thank you very much indeed. Jasper Mortimer, of course, our correspondent in Turkey, following that trial and all developments there in Turkey. Let's stay in the country then and go straight to Ankara and get the opinion of Abdullah Bozkurt of the daily newspaper Zaman. Abdullah, what do you think has happened today in Turkey? Is it striking a light for democracy, or is it something that people should fear? Is it a move towards Islamization? How do you read the events that have happened today?
Well, this is a significant development for the democratic progress of Turkey, because it's for the first time in the Turkish Republic history, the coup plotters or the coup instigators have been tried and sentenced by the court of law. It has never happened in Turkish history, even though we had 4 major military coups in this country, overthrowing democratically elected civilian government from the power by the military. They have never been brought to the justice. So this is a very landmark case, and as I set a precedent for the future of the country. If anybody, a junta organization within the military or a gang nestled with the military establishment try to overthrow a government, then they're going to face harsher sentences. So I think it's a very important, a significant step for the democratization of the country.
But what about the sentencing of an 80-year-old man to 22 years in prison? Looking at it from the outside, that seems extremely harsh, and one questions why that happened.
The judges, they decide based on the existing articles in the Turkish Penal Code. And these codes are written by the parliamentarians and deputies in the parliament. So they have no room to leverage on that articles. If somebody try to overthrow a government or render a parliament without functioning, then this sentence automatically applies. And that's not unique to Turkey, by the way. We are seeing in many different countries, very old generals they brought to justice, even in South Korea and many Latin American countries. But it never happened in Turkey. Even the bloody military coup in 1980, these guys are very old. Only 2 of them are living, and their trial has not started yet, but they are brought to justice. So I think it's important for the democratization of the country. I don't see it as a creeping towards the Islamization, because this has started in 2007 with the discovery of the cache of the weapons, ammunitions, explosives in one of the houses in Istanbul, and it led to expanded with many suspects having come up with many different plans, including shooting down a Turkish jet, blaming to the Greek side, or bombing or the assassinating of the non-Muslim minority leaders in Turkey. And these are evidences accepted by the court, and the judges look at the evidence, analyze and listen to the witnesses as well as the defendants, and they rendered the verdict today.
Abdullah Bozkurt, for now, thank you very much. Do stay with us. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Let's bring in our guests here in the studio before we go back to another Turkish gentleman waiting for us in London. Dorothée and Arnaud here in the studio. We heard there from Abdullah Bozkurt that he feels this is actually a great stride for democracy in Turkey, and that this is a sign that the future is going to look bright and even and, dare we say, peaceful. Would you agree with that?
Well, going back to your question, maybe the case is not between democratization and Islamization of Turkey. This is maybe also why the answer of Abdullah Bozkurt was that nuanced. The idea today is that the sentence is happening on the backdrop of a huge tension in Turkey after the massive protest in Istanbul and the whole country after the Gezi Park affair. This sentence happens right in the middle of the summer, while the public debate is not that lively in Turkey, which is probably why the journalist that was quoted said that maybe people will not go to the street immediately. So, in fact, this trial has to be reconsidered, understood within the larger struggle between the civilian power and the army, which are struggling over the control of the country. So this is the idea of the democratization process of Turkey. But now it looks like we are now heading to a sort of settling of accounts between the Islamists and the army as political forces. So the Islamists as a party, not necessarily as an ideology, but as a party.
Okay, and that obviously spins around the personality of Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Oh, the Prime Minister, yes.
Okay, one tweet about Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Hakan Subate tweeting into us saying that Erdogan is the shame of Turkey. Arnaud, do you see Turkey as a safer place because of this verdict?
I think it doesn't change anything regarding the safety of the country. I think it doesn't reflect the fact that Turkey is being more or less Islamized. It reflects the violence of the political culture in Turkey. Because, of course, the sentences are very harsh. We mentioned 17 life sentences. We mentioned nearly 300 alleged coup plotters.
80-year-old man getting 22 years.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas a very famous mafia leader only got 10 years of jail. So the sentences are very harsh. On the other side, as the correspondent as the columnist of Zaman said, it's also a step in bringing the army, which used to think it was above the law, in bringing this army under civilian control. So that's why it's very understandable for a lot of analysts to say that it's a very good step for the democracy. But on the other side, all that we can see is that neither of the left or the right are non-violent in Turkey.
Okay, just to remind people, the former head of the army has been sentenced to life for leading an alleged military coup. Well, the court has convicted him of doing that, so we'll say it's a military coup. Just to remind people as well who maybe don't know how Turkey is structured, and that until this morning included me, the army has always traditionally played the role of ensuring the separation of state and religion, and that was something enshrined in the Turkish constitution by Ataturk, as I understand it, back in 1922. So that's to sort of give people the sort of context of what's happening in Turkey. We have another guest joining us by phone, I believe. That's Henri, who's a professor of international relations at Lehigh University, joining us from Littleton, New Hampshire. Mr. Barkey, thank you for being with us. In terms of what has taken place in Turkey today, how do you think other countries will be looking at this and looking at Turkey as, say, a safe bet and a safe ally and a place to put your trust?
Well, I'm not sure this has anything to do with whether or not Turkey is a safe ally or a safe place to place a bet, as you said. I think this is both positive and negative in many respects. It's positive in the sense that we are seeing the end of the military's involvement in Turkish politics. And the military is being pushed out. It's being pushed out not just because of this government and social forces, but also because of the mistakes they made in the past. But on the other hand, this trial, like all other trials in Turkey, and this is not the only trial, and I'm not talking about military trials, there are other trials going on in Turkey, especially with the Kurds in the east, are really not very transparent. They're shams in many ways. There are many questions that have been raised about the validity of the evidence and maybe evidence being manufactured, and at the same time, so people who look at the justice system as being flawed in Turkey will continue to think of it as being flawed. Nothing has been done here to essentially make the justice system really, truly an independent and at the same time the fair system. The Turkish justice system before this government came to power, when the military were in command, and now has been a very arbitrary justice system. People get sentenced because of who they are, not because of what they have done. Now, when you look at this case is huge. Definitely, there are people who were engaged in coup plotting, and that is unquestionable. But there are a lot of people in there who the best way I would describe them is the gang that couldn't shoot straight. In Turkey, unfortunately, because the military has been involved in coups before, you've had a whole series of civilians who have thought of themselves as musketeers who can get the military to intervene and make them prime minister or make them minister of this or minister of that. So they all have engaged themselves into this fanciful thinking that they can have a coup. So there's a lot of these people there too. I mean, so it's not, we don't know at this stage, and we have to see what the court says in terms of justification, why certain people got such long sentences, because some of these sentences are rather absurd. I mean, there's somebody who got a sentence of 13 years and 11 months. Why 13 years and 11 months and not 14 years? I mean, there are these very bizarre little queries that emerge out of this. And I think, unfortunately, this case is not going to be one in which people can be proud of, because it is like all the other cases that are going on.
It doesn't seem to provide to any, from anybody's position. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Barkey. It doesn't seem to provide that kind of foundation. Maybe people might have hoped it would have. I mean, clearly, as was getting from someone who's just tweeted in, Erdogan's biggest fear perhaps was another military coup. And maybe that's why this case has been brought the way it has. I'll bring you back in a moment, Mr. Barkey. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, all I'm going to say is that this notion that Erdogan is afraid of a military coup is wrong. The military is so weak today. Yeah, it cannot execute it. The country does not want another coup. So there's this notion that Erdogan...
We're getting agreement here in the studio too, sir. We're getting agreement here in the studio. Mr. Barkey, I've got to pause you there because we need to bring in Tolga Bar, who is waiting for us in London. Tolga is a Turkish citizen and a risk analyst for the London firm Exclusive Analysis. Tolga, give us your thoughts on what has happened today. Do you feel this reflects well on Turkey?
In fact, I think most of all it reflects the ongoing polarization in the Turkish politics. When you look at the reaction to the verdicts, you can see the very core supporters are blindly praising the verdict, while the promoters of the defendants are also blindly suggesting that this is a conspiracy, governments bashing the opposition. But when you look at that, again, as the other speaker said, I think it's very important that Turkey is now, the coup era in Turkey is over. However, during this process, these trial processes, we've seen a lot of controversial decisions made by the courts. There have been a lot of different aspects, like Yaşar Büyükanıt, who put the coup, which in 2007 is out there, while another chief of staff, İlker Başbuğ, has got licenses in prison. So there are a lot of controversies. I would suggest to see this as a power struggle.
Tolga, can I stop you there? We're due for a break now. I'll come back to you at the start of part two. I'll just leave you with a thought, and maybe our panel as well can think about this one. A tweet that's just coming to us. It says, to Barack Obama, happy birthday. Could you please tell your friend Erdogan to stop acting like the owner of Turkey? He just works for the government. So what happens next and where does Erdogan go? Let's put that to our panel after a very short break. Stay with us here in France 24.